Most of us have been late for work. It happens even to the most dedicated employees every once in a while. I would also hazard a guess that the majority of those who missed their alarm clock have also tried to sneak into their place of employment without the boss noticing their delay. In fact, during my previous job, I turned up late a couple of times, and somehow by managing to channel my inner Solid Snake, I made my way to my work area without anyone being the wiser about my belated arrival. Luckily, I've never found myself in a situation whereby being late would result in me losing my job, which is the exact predicament that Level 22's protagonist, Gary, finds himself in. Level 22 refers to the floor in which Gary's office is situated, and it's up to the player to guide him to said office without any of his fellow colleagues, security guards, the big boss himself, and even androids noticing him. It's kind of refreshing to play a stealth game in which the world isn't at risk of a nuclear attack or some kind of awful disaster. Instead, the story is much more low-key, as is the gameplay itself. But that's not to be taken as a criticism. Level 22's simplicity is part of its charm, and although it lacks many of the features found in full-blown stealth games, it's a fun little indie take on the genre. The opening world does a good job of introducing the player to many of the core mechanics, whilst also gently easing them into the game. The objective of every level is to guide Gary to the stairs which will enable him to climb to the next floor of the building. Players can use a variety of tools and tricks to help Gary achieve this. The player can disguise themselves using a newspaper, insert laxatives into an employee's coffee, and even hide using a cardboard box just like another certain popular stealth character. New items and ideas are constantly introduced throughout the campaign, which helps to keep things fresh and enable new approaches for the later levels. Although I've so far described Level 22 as a stealth game, in reality it's actually more of a stealth puzzle hybrid. Players need to avoid being spotted, but they also need to figure out the optimal route for a level. Unlike Stealth Behemoth Metal Gear Solid for example, there is usually only one correct path through each area, meaning the player needs to figure out the precise order to use items scattered around the environment, as well as what route to take. Although this may frustrate some players, I personally found this to make the game all the more enjoyable to play. It's a strange comparison to make, but this game reminded me of the Portal series whilst I was playing it, due to the fact that the player is tasked with figuring out increasingly complex puzzles as the game progresses. Level 22 starts off deceptively easy, however some of the puzzles in the last world left me scratching my head for quite some time. Unlike the previously mentioned Portal games, there is a great sense of achievement in finally figuring out the answer to some of the more convoluted puzzles. I should also quickly mention that if a player is spotted whilst making their way through a level, they will instantly receive a game over. Now I can understand why to some this would make them lose interest in playing Level 22, but I assure you there's no reason to panic. Restarts are almost instant, and the fantastic checkpoint system means the player is usually respawned only a couple of seconds before their last fail state. What could have potentially been a rather tedious game mechanic is thankfully very well implemented throughout the entire game. In addition to the main objective of reaching the exit stairs of each area, the player can also try to find an optional hidden toy in every level, as well as figure out the combination to a safe, which is also somewhere secluded on each floor. I enjoyed finding the toys as the process of doing so is pretty much just an extension of the main game mechanics. In addition, the toys themselves also feature some nice references to popular game and comic culture. Even though I enjoyed finding these fluffy collectibles, I can't really say the same about the safe combination side quest, due to the simple fact that I didn't actually manage to crack one safe through my entire playthrough. In fact, I actually had to look online to find out what clues I was supposed to be looking for in the environment to help me find the combination, as they were so well hidden. Of course, it can be argued that I am entirely at fault in regards to this, but I do still wish however that the game would at least show the player how to explicitly crack the first safe, so at least then I would know what kind of clue I was looking for. Anyway, that's just a small gripe that I have which shouldn't really be held against the game. There are however a few other minor problems with Level 22 that I've encountered, such as regular AI enemies seemingly being able to see through walls. I say regular enemies because the android enemies can actually see through walls. I've also had a few instances whereby enemies have appeared out of nowhere, resulting in a game over. In this example I have just defeated a boss and am heading towards the exit door. As you can see, currently there are no enemies on the other side of these double doors, but as soon as I head through, an enemy appears, resulting in myself getting caught, meaning I have to complete the entire boss fight again. There was no way of me knowing that this would happen beforehand, which is pretty annoying. I've purposely decided not to mention any of the 4 boss fights that feature in this game because I feel that none of them are really worth going into detail about. Whilst technically they are all competent and don't contain any major faults, they are all just, well, a bit dull, and in my opinion they are certainly the weakest aspect of the game. I decided to download Level 22 on a whim after I enjoyed its trailer, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised by how much fun I had playing it. Although it's not as complex as the likes of Splinter Cell or MGS, it doesn't try to be. Instead it focuses on being a clever little stealth puzzler and succeeds with aplomb. My biggest complaint concerning Level 22 is its short runtime. I managed to finish it in about 5 hours, and I just wish it ran for a bit longer. Despite this fact, the time that I did spend with it I enjoyed immensely, so if you're looking for a fun indie distraction, then look no further than this.